asked me to open up. Let's all give a nice hand clap for Ali.
All right.
Putting together. He does a good job, always creates a venue for us in this community. I've been coming here for years, very appreciative, a lot of gems, a lot of good things that I've gotten, again, from him putting together this venue, so much appreciation to him. We got a couple new faces in here as well that I see. If this is your first time here at Everlasting Life, raise your hand. Welcome. Welcome, nice to have you guys. We're glad that you came out. You're in store for some good information. And on that note, I'm going to introduce Master Teacher, my uncle over here, Taj, Brother Taj Tariq Bey.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Can you all hear me well? Now, some of the things we're going to go over, we've discussed in the past, but we do recognize that apparently a lot of people still don't have fundamental concepts. Is this clear enough? You got it? Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. When I say that, what you discover, even when people are seeking remedies or doing anything business-wise, or dealing with court cases, or dealing with tickets, or dealing with mortgages and loans and credits, and almost everything that they deal with every day in life, with their family and family matters, upon examination, you discover that they really don't even understand the fundamental politics. And most of it is predicated on the fact that they're distracted by belief systems that they were groomed with from childhood that actually are rooted in what is called schismata operations. And unfortunately, and the reality is, most people know that they're not stupid. And most people know that they're intelligent and they have basic intelligence. The real problem is that they don't have a lot of facts. They've been groomed with belief systems and pretty much are not aware of how the world really works. And what is done basically to control the masses is that they create secret societies, whereas they can have people from different gradients of government and organizations at different levels of knowledge in order to control the masses who are considered food. I'm going to repeat that. The masses in general are considered food. That's a fact. What you've been calling racism and prejudice is really an indicator that you've identified that you're food. When the Europeans who have been occupying the Western Hemisphere, which is referred to Masonically as the North Gate, they consider themselves the keepers of the North Gate, means that you're under occupation. And one of the other problems is that the people don't know they're under occupation because they think they came from a little island off the coast of South Asia that we now call Africa and Tamari. Not that we're not related, but 90%, and a little bit more than 90%, only 2% of the Asiatics that domicile in North America are actually from the other side of the continents, and that's a fact. One of the other problems is that you've been promoted to think that you were brought by, from someplace else on a good ship, Jesus, by so-called paid-off black leaders who are usually 32, they're usually about 32, some 33-degree Masons. And they have a dedication to the church, while in secret, they know, in fact, that fez that they wear is a Moorish fez. And that the lodges that they belong to all have Moorish names. And they're all feminine. All lodges are called women. However, they have an oath, so they're not going to talk. However, it's your birthright, so we don't have to hide the truth from you because it's your history. It's your birthright. and you don't have to pay for the truth. You may, servant is worthy was higher, and logically, when you come in a spot like this, you got lighting and stuff like that, and you have people that have to accommodate. And so there's a cover allodial cost, not a fee, but an allodial cost. To that degree, we share with you things that other people pay thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of Federal Reserve notes and take oaths to Rome not to reveal this stuff to you, while they get comfortable nigger jobs. They're called token jobs. And so again, if you're going to start solving problems, you will be limited. However, what you can do is start throwing what you call wrenches in the gears. And the wrenches in the gears are essentially truth, unfettered truth, uncorrupted truth, the truth about your pedigree, your nationality and your birthright, and the truth of how it was taken, why it was taken, and how the operations of administration concerning that are generally functioning, even though you have what you call multiple layers to the onion. What we're going to deal with is a lot of the surface. Whereas a child maybe that can read it all can do some research and kind of verify, if you get the point. Because for the most part, the people are asleep and don't know they're asleep. And when I say sleep, it don't mean that they're sleepy. It means that they've been living their lives on a false premise. No different than, out of fun, people teach the children that Santa Claus bought them the bike. But when they get a little older, the children know better that Santa Claus ain't real and he didn't buy them that bike. However, and unfortunately, in the reality of world politics, the adults have never grown up. So they're still dealing with Santa Claus and don't know they're dealing with Santa Claus. And so you're dealing with multiple levels of what is known as jurisdiction. You're dealing with in personam, those of you who have paper, take notes. You're dealing with in personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, and territorial jurisdiction. And your arguments or your claims of right will be involved at all times in those matters, even when you're talking economics. And economics does not necessarily mean only money, or what you're calling money. All right? So, get that out of your head if you think that that's where it's locked at. And a lot of things we will not be able to cover, but what I want to do is maybe cover some concepts and answer certain questions that will clear up some things. And a lot of people don't ask questions because they don't want to demonstrate their ignorance in a matter. So a lot of questions that some of you will ask will be actually questions that others want to ask and don't have the courage to ask. Are we clear? So don't hesitate to ask questions. However, fundamentally, how many of you know about the secret treaty of Verona? Raise your hand. And look around the room. Raise your hand, look around the room so you can be aware of the consciousness of the room. Because any one of you may, at any time, jump in and share. Because we want to try to share, help with each other. Are we clear? So a lot of the conversations of what you call the narratives that are presented to the people are actually diversionary, by design and by deliberation. So when you, and that's a plural you, seek to address some of the problems that are plaguing you and your families politically and economically, one of the other things that you want to recognize that the Romans do as a fundamental concept is what they call shooting situations. They will have Roman soldiers on the street calling themselves policemen who are actually contracted members of the gangs of New York that started in Harlem, stealing the land from the Asiatics. They're actually organized criminals. Are we clear? So don't get the uniforms confused. It doesn't mean that the individual people who happen to be policemen are bad people. It doesn't mean that. And it doesn't mean that people who join the police force join with that mentality. However, that is what that organization is, and that is the policy. Whoever operates in that organization will be from time to time sent out to do kill jobs. This is what, a lot of times people get confused when they see policemen do what appears to be useless and heartless murders on the street and get away with it. Those are usually assignments. Whether they want organs or whether they want to remove certain amount of people who may be a threat to some politician or to some priest. Are we clear? And when you think that the politicians at North America and the priesthood are separate, you got a wrong concept about life, period. All of your politicians are actually priests. Are we clear? I want you to understand that all your politicians are actually priests. Your concept of what a priest is also may be wrong. You look at it etymologically, they're actually parasites. And the deal is, a lot of people keep assuming that when someone says priest, that means that they're divine oriented from the Most High Creator in heaven type thing. No, they're dark, light, and in between. Are we clear? No different than grains of dirt. Are we clear? Now that's the truth. Now the reason you're here and the reason we're doing what we're doing is to try to take and bring a little remedy to the human family, those who have time to hear and those who have some kind of will and some kind of civility left in their blood before they get devoured, and that they may transfer some of this information to their family members and to their children, so that maybe, for the most part, maybe we can save some of the generations that are coming, because basically they intend to exterminate you. So to be straightforward, that's just the fact. So let's not, play cheesecake. Just tell you the truth. And so the economics and the politics are operated with that purpose and aim at its heart. I don't care what they tell you, how they smile at you, how they present things to you. They have systematically, by generations, disempowered you, unarmed you, and prepared you for slaughter. And all of their politics are groomed to meet that end. Are we clear? Whether you're dealing with the eugenics program, which is where they're destroying, or what you call dissolving families, where they're taking people's children and stuff like that. They have, I think, an average of 145, between 145 to 146,000 children that go missing every year. And many of them are amongst children that go into these agencies, not knowing that many of their people's children are targets for their organs and for experimentation. And at the same time, also for elimination or dissolving the family, which is a genocide attack under unum sanctum policy. Now to divert the people's attention from the reality of what's going on, they'll talk about racism and prejudice to keep you busy arguing an issue that really isn't the issue. All right, every once in a while, swipe that for me to keep that off. That really isn't the issue. Now, how many of you noticed the 3 stars on the tags in this area? How many of you know what they really represent? Not what people think, but what they really represent. You know? All right, here's the mic.
I believe that.
Don't believe anything. I asked you, did you know? All right, with due respect, and this is for everyone. What we want to do is grow up and start being men and women. When I was a child, I thought as a child I did the things that children do. When I became a man, I put away my childish things. Beliefs are for children, rabbits, people, donkeys, and people who don't have the capacity to think rationally or respect divine sensibilities given to them by the divine creator for reasoning, which is a defense mechanism. Therefore, men and civilized people do not deal with belief systems. Belief systems are a control mechanism and is actually a war machine for controlling cattle, or people who are considered cattle. I'm not dismissing that. I'm saying grow up. Get away from that. What do you know?
the Vatican, the military, the District
Get
of
the mic.
Columbia, the Vatican,
Here's the
Rome,
first star.
the District of Columbia, the military, and London.
Well, yes, well, the District of Columbia is their headquarters of operations. The United States Corporation Company, Trading Company, is the military arm for the enforcement of unum sanctum. Washington DC is not the capital for the Republic of the United States, is the capital operations of the unum sanctum operations for the military arm of the Jesuit order and the Knights of Malta. Are we clear? And P2 Masons. Get it, Brother Mike. Anybody wants to interject? Get the mic.
That's the reason why they consider city-states.
Exactly that. And this is also why the cattle here can't vote. I mean, they vote, but it's an exercise to keep them busy, make them think they're important. You know, so we're starting to deal with the real politics. Now, the point of it is, what do you have, and why are we saying certain things? We want you to, if you're willing to, start using the limited power that you do have that they didn't take from you. Because most of it they've already stripped from you for generations, are we clear? So, as an example, with the people who think that their vote counts, you know, that's people who insist on bragging about the bike Santa Claus brought them from when they was 9, and they want to show it to all their friends. And that's fine, you know, but any intelligent person knows that that person, if they're, you know, above 9, they got a mental problem. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Because a man knows better, if you get the point. Now, so what we're actually talking about is a layer of the onion of the real politics of the planet called Earth, also called Gaia. Are we clear? Also sometimes referred to as prison planet, and you're prisoners in your own land. That must be made clear to you in order for you to understand a lot of the things that we're saying and why we're saying them. However, a lot of the remedy and recourse is really rooted in yourself. No one will bring it to you, and no one can save you. You must pull it out of yourself, are we clear? So I want you to ask honest questions and, you know, don't necessarily hold back, because that's how things are going to come out. Now repeat. Go ahead, repeat. I want you to repeat. And go ahead.
What I said about Rome and Washington all being city-states.
Well, yes. Now, what is the state? Because we don't want to assume, you see. And this is the reason I'm asking you that, because a lot of people consider the states the actual physical land. And it's not. It's a private corporation registered actually in Delaware. It's an administrative operations of the land and the people of the land. And their estates, they're the people, the natural people's estates. Were converted. It's called conversion. And George Washington, the 9th president for that corporation, was one of the major players in converting the Moorish estates into the states. So when you're talking states, don't think the land. But when you're talking about making right of claim, you better think the land. It's 2 different jurisdictions. This is why they have the Daughters of the American Revolution. You notice that the building is all marble, including the steps are all marble. including if you walk in that building and you see the plaque for the United States, you'll see a small U. It's talking about the Republic. If you go look at her clothes, you'll see her turban. It's a little woman, European, but most of them are, and members who are members of the DAR, they call it the DAR. And of course, those of you who know civics, basic civics operations, the DAR manual is the manual that's presented to the masses for training in civics, for like when people come from different political territories, they get a DAR manual. The interesting thing of it is that the people here are usually the least educated in those matters and suffer the most. Are we clear? Because they've been denationalized, so their mentality does not even deal in that area. And so that allows them to be open, sort of like an open box of cereal amongst rats. Or like a rabbit, a bleeding rabbit, running around in a closed fence, wanting to have a voting discussion about the wolf, about how they're going to be fried or stewed or whatever. And this is pretty much what the real political condition of our people is. And a lot of them feeling that in their hearts, shut their mind down and go into denial. And others hide behind their belief systems to feel safe when they're not safe. And their overseers promote belief systems to keep them passive while they get sheared. That's their job. And the 501c3 Skull and Bones Agreement is what's given to the Negro marching 32-degree Mason preacher guys to keep lying on Jesus type thing. And to keep the people who really of that same bloodline and don't even know it in the position that they're in while hiding behind Jesus. This is one of their pledges. But also one of their pledges, which are called charges, is not to believe the BS that they're teaching to the masses. And also remember the fact that the Bible and church didn't come from the Bible came from the church. So when, all Masons know that. And so when them reverends be telling you, about Jesus, dropping through clouds in heaven in a light of glory of the sun, delivering you the book, and that without it you ain't going to heaven type stuff. He knows that he's presenting the platform for what's called dogmata under his instructions as a secret society curia member, feeding off of his own people. And because it's a military operation, a lot of our people, if they were really thinking, it would confuse them. How can the poorest communities afford these churches within a 4-block distance in any direction, north, south, east, or west? How can that be afforded? It's a military operation. And they're the only ones who don't know it, because they're food. Are we clear? Now they'll lie to the people and say, oh, it's separation of church and state, until they sell your womb. But the marriage certificate is a womb sale. It is. And it belongs to the Vatican. And it's a bank bond. And at that time, from a Kabbalistic point of view, or from a view of avoiding karmic response, they will always codify and tell you the truth in order to justify themselves. So they'll say, by the power vested in me, by the state of Maryland, throwing rice in your eyes, you're distracted and stuff. I do pronounce you man and wife. They just told you state agent. But most people are so busy, wanting to cut the cake, they never think of what that man just said. And yet in the next breath, when he's behind the pulpit, he'll talk about separation of church and state, and that his allegiance is to the Lord, but he don't tell you it's the Lords of London under the secret treaty of Verona. And it's just the truth. Unfortunately, for those who are sensitive to that, just get over yourself. And it's time for us to start, just because we've sold ourselves out, we don't have to keep selling out generation after generation. And again, that's why we're dealing with some of this information. Because it has to be from the will of the people, which is all you have left, that they didn't take from you, to start willfully rejecting Rome and the institutions of Rome. Because Rome has claimed everything concerning you, including your labor, And with the marriage certificates, they've claimed the eggs in the left and the right fallopian tubes, and they're all stock. That is the stock market. Now that's the fact. You know, so people think that the stock market is Sears and Roebuck's stock. Yes or no? It's the people. Are we clear? So the politics that we're talking about and referencing to you is the truth as to why is it that the Roman order of Curia put their names, their family names on these people of Asiatic African descent who think that they're monkeys. Like Negro means monkey, and they think they're monkey descent, you know, and so they say, we're from Negro ancestry. You know, well, no. But if they believe that, they're outside of human family. You know, or some will say, well, we're people of color, and you just told the world that you're an artificial person. And that's a legal term too. And then of course treated accordingly, now they're mad. It's because they can't read. But then Rothschild and Gates and them have been controlling their so-called education. And education means to bring forth. So it's like bringing forth the seed in a corrupted soil. You know, so education within itself does not mean what people think it means. It just means to bring forth. Now, what you bring forth now, that's another issue, isn't it? Now, civilized people and grown-ups, that's what we used to call them when we were little, understand that human beings, you know, the human physical beings, nativity that come from the womb of woman, that got a belly button, have nationalities. Human beings that are in the state of boys and girls think that human beings are identified by colors. That's one of the indicators when you can tell that they're under mind control. Are we clear? And they will frustratingly try to equate that with the rest of the civilized world on the platform of civilized activities as far as international trade and other things, and get frustrated because it never works for them. And so they think everybody doesn't like their color, if you get the point. When it's sort of like trying to sell kitty cats as pit bulls and wondering why the world rejects you. Kind of like that. And those of you who have read, say as an example, the Dungy case of 1855 will understand the principle of status and the principle of heritability, and of course pedigree identity. And of course, it will give you a timely point of examination and analysis on to the status and as to why the European created the brain system in the first place, to steal the estates, you see? Because once a man or woman or child is outside of the nomenclature of their own pedigree and their own heritage, they have no heritage, because the heritage is rooted in the fact of their mothers. This is why it's called heritage. And so they deny their own bloodline. They also have abandoned their estate. And so this is again where Europeans, unbeknownst to our people, whenever you see foreclosures and things like that, or where you see them gentrifying communities, if you get out of the emotional parts of the argument and look at details, they will have abandonment, 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 abandonment. They're talking about an estate. And these people start talking about skin color, because that's their training, like little rats. And then of course their assigned leaders promote that, and they think that these guys are really working for their community. No, but it is what it is. And most of the people who are actually being victimized by this mind control will actually defend their so-called black leaders, because they're usually 32-degree reverends who don't admit that they're Masons. You know, they'll condemn Masonry across the pulpit, and in secret they are Masons, if you get the point. And all you need to go and go look in the privileged parking area, and you'll see all them badges on the back of them cars. And that's just the truth. And the matrons are usually Eastern Stars. And that's fact. Now, as far as any details concerning that, masonry is not a negative. It's pretty much preservation of history, truth, and the real operations of disciplines, politics, and the Gnostic wisdom on the planet, reserved for a special few, if you get the point. So it's not a negative. The holding that truth back from the masses for selfish gain is the negative, not to be confused with masonry. Are we clear? Are we clear? All right, I just want you to understand that, because a lot of people give masonry a negative based on what masons may do. Are we clear? All right, I just want you to get that clear too. Now, I want you to notice on top of your fez, did you ever count the perforations on top of your fez? You're looking to the left and the right. Did you ever examine it? What do you see? Here's Brother Mike. Thank you, Brother Frank. Can you help us out with that if you don't mind?
Yes, sir. Here you go, my brother.
4 circles on the top of the face.
Yeah. Did anyone ever teach you about what that is?
No.
Huh?
No.
Again, well, we'll get with that. All right, now y'all got this? If y'all have a copy, if you want a photo and study this later, you can. If you want to take a picture and study it later, because I'm getting ready to erase it. Because again, remember, we're talking the real politics. Let me know when you're done, because I'm getting ready to erase it. And remember, this can also be referred to people who really don't understand this, who don't really understand this, often refer to this falsely, as white supremacy. What it actually is and those of you need to take the picture over again, go ahead and don't hesitate, because we're going to erase it. And keep this in mind, if you don't keep yourself level in what's really going on, you can get caught up in what is called the narrative. That means they constantly shoot situations to divert you from what's really going on. Are we clear? Are we clear? And if you're not careful, you fall for it. Are we clear? That's what that operation actually is. And it's falsely called that. That is the cover for the dumb masses. Because they got to give you something to argue, if you get the point, so that you don't start dealing with the facts of what's really going on. That's what's going on. That's the church bull that's enforcing it. This is the military operation. This deals with the monetary systems that distribute around the world. And this is the head, or what you call the Godhead. Like when you see, for those of you who would like maybe a little reference to this in, say, Septuagint or Bible, write 1st and 2nd Thessalonians and go look at it yourself, and you'll understand that that's the one that Yahshua told you about, that will place themselves on the throne of God, claiming to be God. That's Romans, that's the Vatican. Are we clear? And their claim of the right to your life is they slaughtered the Christ principle out of your head, or they lynched Jesus, as they say. That's a code name. That's not the name of Yeshua. It's a code name, and you being direct descendants, they've been slaughtering you ever since. However, they've been hiding behind that name to do the Constantinian order on the planet Earth. That is the political operations. And Europeans are not unaware of that. They're not dumb to that. The only ones that are dumb to that are the food. And the food is called Negro, black, colored, Indian sometimes, whatever tag they accept. None of which they are. Are we clear? They're all of Canaanite, Moabite descent. Modern name for them is Moroccan short Moors. Are we clear? They are the Americans. By pedigree, by fact, by bloodline. And America's not India, and we Indians. You get that? All right. Now, people who don't know better keep playing the game, and then in the process, they sacrifice the next generation. Are we clear? So if you're gonna start fixing problems, you gotta start telling the truth. Are we clear? Let me see a semi-eraser here. All right. This paper's pretty good, Frank. As a matter of fact, it kind of works a little
Well,
better
we
than the
don't have
erasers
Unum
do.
Sanctum. Could I add something to that? While
Yeah.
we talking about the Unum Sanctum.
Yeah, give him the mic, please.
Yeah, just the other day, I had a revelation about Columbus discovering America.
We say, well, how could Columbus discover America when his land was full of people? But under the Unum Sanctum and a couple other.
The doctrine is called the Doctrine of Discovery.
So in effect,
He introduced it
Columbus
onto the
did
land.
discover America through the doctrine of discovery, which include 3 or 4 Pope bulls, the Interterra Convener, and other documents. So we need to grow up from thinking that he didn't discover the land, because in 1492, he was the first one to bring the rush of the remaining European nations to these lands.
Not really, because they'd already been traveling. You know, you're talking about Cortez, Da Gama, and others. What Christopher Colombo represents is the introduction on a massive scale of the sadistic operations of Unum Sanctum of slaughtering the people. You know, and to that degree, you know, he's a revered member of the Roman Curia, and which is why they give an honor of a day for him. You know, but he was actually a sadist murderer under Unum Sanctum operations. You know, so that's his pretty much role. Now your fez, if you look at the top of your fez, you'll see, and this is symbolic. I'm not doing all this exactly all, but I want you to get a view of what this is. You know, an idea as far as the preparations. And you'll see this in all 4 corners, right? And then you have in the center the finial, or the umbilical, the navel. Or in, like if you're dealing with Gnostic wisdom, you might see a symbol, like you look at the old Bibles, and you look at the old scriptures, and the Sanskrit scriptures, you look at old geometry, symbols, physics, etc., and metaphysics, and you'll see this symbol that represents what they call the black dot theory, or what they call the God principle. And it also, in physics, represents the symbol of the sun in the sky. Now that fez is also called the crown of the sun, or they'll call corona sol, which means crown of the sun. From a side view, you'll see that finial like this, right? And then you see the cord. Now when you're attached to the placenta, to your mother, this represents the ball of earth, called, you know, ball of mud called earth. And although, unless you do special order, you know, your fez will not have 360 degrees. However, in special order, your real fez got 360 degrees. But they're not going to give it to you. Meaning, like if you go into some lodge or you go Masonic regalia, they'll give you a standard fez that looks fezzy, if you get the point. But a real true fez got 360 degrees. It's a very heavy tassel. Are we clear? You got 9 inches, you also have 18 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches. However, point that I'm saying to you is, these are also your 4 corners of the world. And when you get into the science of your fez, you'll also get into what's called the earth glyph. You know the earth glyph? Then when you get into the metaphysical side of studying the earth and things on the earth and the beings on the earth, then that would be referred to as the mundane cross. Then when you get into the deeper metaphysical realities of the earth glyph, then it would be called the master seal. Are we clear? And then they would have the 333 in every corner. And the truth of the matter is, what you must understand is every man is a Mason, which means every man is a mother's son. So you got a belly button, you came from a mother, you're Mason, whether you belong to some club or not. Are we clear? Not to be confused with the fraternal orders. Are we clear? All right. Now, the deal of it is, you see these 3 circles, right? You see them 3 circles? 3 circles? You will find that center will be 9. That's the time you spend in the womb of the first school, called your mother's womb. The second will be 12. Right? The third will be 18, which also equals 9. And the 12 also equals 3. So 3 is at the heart of the crystalline operations of things built on this planet and in this particular solar system. Therefore, it's represented also by the equilateral triangle of 360 degrees, of 120 degrees, 120 degrees, 120 degrees, and you got 3 sides. It's called the equilateral triangle. Are we clear? Now, of course, you already know the pyramids on the planet, most of which is actually in the Western Hemisphere. Most people think that most of the pyramids are in Hikupta, that you call Egypt, that's Hikupta. No, most of your pyramids are here in the Western Hemisphere. They're just hidden from you. Are we clear? Are we clear? You may seek to go around the world thinking you're going to find the wisdom, the rest of the world seeks to come here, and you're asleep. In Masonry, they also refer to the sleeping architect as Alqamar Malik, which is actually a symbolic of the Asiatics of the North who don't know their Moors. Are we clear? And so while you're asleep, they feed on you like vultures. That's where your pain, your miseries, and your problems, economic, etc., have their origin on people who know the truth, who've been feeding on you, taking advantage of your sleep, and pretending that they're the moral and ethical ones, when actually they're parasites. Are we clear? Get the system right. Anyone who, if you raise your hand, you know, get on the mic. Keep me on point, because I'm going to expand on this. Yeah, always like that.
Well, I just had a question.
Please get in the mic.
I just wanted to ask you to repeat yourself when you were speaking about the sleeping, the terminology.
Please get in the mic, speak loudly.
The terminology used about sleeping, you said sleeping is referred to what? Hiram Abiff?
Hiram Abiff is a ritual that they created, I think, around the 30s, maybe a little earlier, and introduced contemporarily into Masonic rituals. And Hiram Abiff, sun at high noon, Ram, Aries. Yeah, talking about the grand architect who's buried in the dark north. This is why you see The cornerstone for the city hall in Philadelphia that's designed exactly like a mosque is in an open grave pit with a brass rail. It is not on the northeast side of the building. The northwest side of the building is actually an open grave pit. People come from all around the world, take pictures, look at it, and people who don't even know it's all about them standing on the corner selling drugs to each other for the Khazarian order, destroying themselves.
This is on, Taj. Quick question.
Get in the mic, please.
You said Hiram Abiff, can you spell that? And you said that was also a...
Hiram Abiff.
Yes.
Hiram,
Got it.
and Abiff is A-B-I-F. And some of them might spell with two F's, but basically that's it. But understand that's symbolic. And the grand architect being in the dark north, which means you're buried in your head in your own land. This is also symbolized in the early, I forget when the movie was made. It's called The Wizard of Oz. When they talk about the Lion of Judah, lost courage, right? Straw man, which represents the 14th Amendment that they set up after the closing of the Bureau of Refugees and Freedmen. Tin Man, which represents Rusty, represents them cribbing all your industry. The yellow brick road, which represents the Zodiac Constitution, the law of the Moors, and the law of the worlds, which you will see in the courtyard at City Hall in Philadelphia, which is the culmination place where Cornwallis and them had wars, and that it was actually a battleground. And the Oddfellows and other European Masons who plotted on altering the records and stealing your birthright met at Carpenter's Hall, a few blocks down from Independence Hall. You know, and as a matter of fact, just the other day, the 14th, Grand Chief Azim Hopkins Bey, as he does every year, the Moorish Science Temple, Temple 11, did the trek, and it was maybe about 500 Moors out there, and of course the policy enforcers block all the traffic and stuff like that, and they take them through there and give them history lessons and stuff like that. You know, half the people walking the street don't even know it's about themselves. They think it's a religion. You know, so you can even tell truth right in people's face and they think it's a belief system, which is part of their dogma systems that keeps Rome safe. And understand that belief systems are actually a war tool. It has nothing at all to do with spirituality. Nothing at all to do with true spirituality. It's all mind control. Now that's the fact. You know, and of course, because people will protect their mind control thinking is spirituality, which seals their fate. Are we clear? Now back to the point with this. Understand this is 360 degrees. All of these circles is 360 degrees. This is 360 degrees, right? And from this, injustice, and Jesus symbolizes justice, are we clear? But that's not the name of the prophet, are we clear? That's just a code system set up by the popes of Rome in 325, you know, to hide behind that name in order for world conquest purposes, are we clear? Called the Nicene Council. All right, and so with your nine months of man's birth, you're 12, and this is deal with the 12 visible constellations in this particular solar system, which makes up what is called the 12 signs. It's also referred to in Septuaginta in the Bible as the 12 disciples. All right, they really represent the 12 constellations. And this represents the duality of nine, your 3 threes, right? And so you have as above, so below. That's hexalpha, all right? Or what people who really don't know the truth call the Jewish star. Are we clear? J is used in language since about the 1500s. And what they call Jew is really the Khazarian order claiming a right. They're claiming to be something they're not. It's a false platform, are we clear? So they teach the dummies this, while they themselves know it's really and they're not the same thing. Are we clear? Are we clear? This is who we are, really. And that's only those of us who are in the North Gate, those who crossed the river before the Atlantis became the Atlantic Ocean, when it was once a river, before the cocoa plate shift. I'm just dropping those things at you so that you can keep that in mind, all right? So you don't get caught in the false narratives set up by Rome. Are we clear? Now, again, now so they can hide things in your face, like say when people graduate from school, graduate degrees, and they throw the tassel, they think they got it going on now. They're just getting peanut butter sandwiches with no jelly. You know what I mean? But it keeps them busy, makes them think that they're doing something. However, they'll crown their head like this. If you ever look at the top of a cap, when people graduate, you'll notice if you look at the top, it's stitched oblique, like that, right? Excuse my scribbly drawing. Then they have the umbilical cord, roll them on the color of your degrees, and we'll have under it, excuse my scribbly drawing, and you'll notice like in the front of it, the little kufi that they have underneath of it, they'll have a little indentation that represents the termination of the thalamus that comes from the dark side of the brain, terminates right above the nose right here. All clear? These are your 4 gates of the 333. Same thing. Of course, they'll never teach it to the people that are wearing it. It's your 90 degree here, 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, which equals 360 degrees. And then when you graduate, you toss it on the other side, which is 180 degrees. 180 degrees equaling 9. Back to basics, to your mother. If you want to trace anything about your inheritance in her retenses, go to your mama. That's why I say honor your mothers and your fathers, that your days may be longer upon the earth land which the Lord thy God has given thee. Or you better start knowing who your pedigree is if you got any estate whatsoever. So the political problems that you have on the planet where the popes of Rome have claimed your estate, that's the role that the birth certificate and the marriage certificate plays in the Western Hemisphere for claiming human beings. And this is why they also refer to them as, oh, this is a divine agreement between you and the Lord of heaven of Jesusness. You know, it's a bank bond that's moved through the stock market by Rome. And you're the stock. Point. It's how things have been operating and how they do operate. Now the foundation upon which all of these operations take place, not these, don't relate their operations with these, because this is your stuff. Are we clear? This is your stuff. Don't reject your stuff just because Rome is misusing it. Are we clear? Are we clear? Now, from the hex alpha, as above, so below, that's your Hermetic law. You have what is called the carpenter's tools, or Jesus' tools, justice's tools. And so you'll have a compass with the pivotal radii point here. And this is for making your circles. Are we clear? or the radius of the earth. And excuse my scribble drawing, because I'm not that good, but I'm doing the best I can with the circumstances. And then you have the square. All right. And that is essentially, if you pay attention, the upper world and the underworld. It's still hex alpha. Are we clear? In the operations of justice in government, this would be called isonomy. That's your stuff too. Are we clear? So just because somebody didn't tell you that, don't you think it ain't, because that's your stuff. And you need to really learn your real history and bloodline about yourself. Are we clear? Without binding yourself to Rome, who's been preoccupied stealing it and paying those amongst you to help keep you stupid while they suck your blood. The problem that they're having on the planet right now is that different people from different organized orders who are indeed, members of Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, not so much Knights of Columbus, because Knights of Columbus are collectors, is the economic collection arm for the Kaiklos, or what you call the Great Circle of the Klan, what you refer to loosely as Ku Klux Klan. But say some of the P2 Masons of the Vatican, and you have a few honorable people left in the different secret societies that are now clashing with the Khazarian order of the Curia, wanting to restore the Republic at North America, mostly predicated on the fact that they've come to the conclusion that if they kill the host, nobody gets anything. Are we clear? So it's not like they all of a sudden became moral and ethical. It's that they've gotten to the point that the true recognition is that you can't kill the host and continue to suck. Meaning that if Vampy sucks all the blood and the host dies, Vampy is on his own. Now, if he wants to go get a Coke, he can try that for a while. It ain't gonna work. Pepsi too. I mean, he can do his thing, but he ain't gonna last either. And so this is why you see what appears to be certain political conflicts that are really cover stories, like Putin working with Trump and stuff like that, where you see the United States corporation have been systematically undermining Venezuela, and where they got that fleet of ships off Grenada. They've been there for a while. And then you see Brazil and other true American states have been putting ships out there to block them. You're not getting that in the mainstream news, so I'm informing you, you don't have that knowledge. And like we've been telling the people here for, 78 years, civil war going on, they've just been keeping it low-key, all clear. And a lot of the dynamics of people thinking that Donald Trump is out to lunch, that's all a dog and pony show, because he's not. He's playing two sides of the chessboard. And he's a made man too, and he's a Knights Templar. However, all of them are simply battling for control of your stolen birthright. Although Trump, contrary to what most of our people think, who don't know the real politics, is really doing more things in favor of our people than they think that he is. It's just that, they're out to lunch and they don't know how to read the politics, if you get the point. It's not a support for him, it's just simply telling the truth. But at the same time, understand that a lot of the things that he may do to the positive is not necessarily because he has your best interest in heart, is that he don't have a damn choice. Are we clear? And so what they're doing, they're trying to force a lot of the corporate Curia members to bring industry back to North America. In other words, they're trying to stabilize the whole coast before this thing collapses, and then they all are out of it. Not only that, What is occurring is that the governments of the earth are dumping the UST bonds, which they constructed since the Civil War, on the back of the Moors, who they branded Negro, blacks, colored people, Indians, and coon and shine, Negroites, and whatever else brand they've been using this week or that week, because they change up on the brands, whatever works this week, according to the Negro marching leader guys. Whatever their payoff is, that's what they'll change the people to. Meaning that the Negro game run out, so now they're people of color. That run out, now they're colored people. That run out, then they're super duper black people of the gods of the melanin of Uranus type thing. Everything to divert you from the pedigree. Are we clear? Are we clear? For those of you also who would like to do a little bit more research into the Inquisition operations, go into war records and do a little research into European operations on the planet, and look at the Inquisition operations against the Moors and Jews. They're Moors and Jews as you, but you ain't Jews, you're Yahudi. Are we clear? Same people. Are we clear? Are we clear? So some of the Moors are Muslims, some of them are Hebrew, or what you call Hebrew. But they're still all the same people. It has nothing to do with religion, it has to do with territorial operations, although it's often presented to dummies as religious belief system, which is a diversion to keep them divided against each other. Think, oh, my belief is the real sandwich, and they ain't got a damn thing to do with beliefs whatsoever. It has to do with inheritances. So whatever they have to do in the politics, their politics will be to keep you mixing emotionalism with what you would be spirituality. Are we clear? And those who rule will always be clear on what it is and what it is not. Are we clear on that? Yes. Now, again, in relationship to this, when you see also the glyph in physics, and they'll give you this stuff in 3rd, 4th grade, really. And you see the earth glyph, right? So when you see the earth glyph, and then you see the priesthood, you know, thinking that, you know, having people think they're all spiritual and stuff of God, like this. Because they just got on the phone, his iPhone with Jesus and his personal relationship with him. You don't have the number though. You ain't got an I-12 and stuff like that. One that Jesus got. And you see them doing this and all this sort of stuff, and you, oh, that's just so sweet of Jesus' spiritualness. You know what he's just saying, I rule the earth. You understand? They've declared themselves God. That's the earth glyph. All right? And so they do like this, and then they lower the bottom pole, extend, excuse the drawing, but y'all get it anyway, don't you? Then you remove the aggregate lines here, right? And of course that would be like that, and that would be like that. Now, how many know the Germanic name for this? Go ahead, give the mic.
The Coptic cross.
Well, that's Asiatic. That's one of our names for it. The Germanic name.
Germanic name?
Yeah.
I was gonna say Celtic cross.
Well, that's still what it is, what we're talking about. Germanic name for the Great Circle. Give him like
Circle, church.
Circle, church.
Well, church is exactly what it is. So this symbol in German is called church. So when people are going to them buildings and everything, how many people you know that's ever been taken to church? You're exactly right. I see you shaking your head, and you're exactly right. They're going through ritual. They ain't never been taken to church. They have no knowledge of what they're dealing with whatsoever. It is the great serpent. Yet they have not been taught the science of it. All clear. So this keeps the sheeple. That's why he called himself pastor, and he called them sheep, because that's what they are. They're food. He got a cashmere sweater on, cashmere suit, cashmere car, cashmere parish. They trying to keep the phone on. Thinking that Jesus got a bank account at Chase Manhattan. Now that's the real truth. And the whole business is keeping them under control, because they're the food. What you call in French, chattel, which translated into English, cattle, and are treated accordingly. Are we clear? Now, so if you understand the real mentality of Europeans, is because they know your history and you don't know your own. And half the stuff that he uses, you think is his stuff, and it's actually your own. Are we clear? And thus, you're buried in the dark north. You're buried in your own land, mentally. Are we clear? This is why, like at the City Hall, how many of you all have ever been into the City Hall building at Philadelphia and observed the architecture? How many of you? All right, you'll notice that it has 4 gates. Those are your 4 gates. But you'll also notice in the middle of the courtyard, the zodiac is there. And in the north gate, you'll notice that the pillars of Atlas, Morocco, they have Asiatics holding up the pillars. And then right outside, they have number 1, North Broad Street, and you have Masonic Lodge. That people come, and you have Ben Franklin and Georgie. Thank you, good brother. In front, with their Masonic regalia on and their aprons on, crescent, grip, and they're standing, and you'll see the pathway right from the north gate of the parapet of City Hall architecture. Then you look to your right, to the northwest, and then you see the fountain, and then you see that pathway with all the nations of the earth, their flags on both sides. Then you get to the top, and on one of our mounds, it was actually a brother who did the architecture, what is called the Art Museum. And it's actually built on a mound. That's why in the picture of Rocky, they have him running up the steps. That's what that symbolizes, him conquering it. And right at the base of the steps, they have a statue of Winona, whom they murdered about 1902, same year that John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates set up the education system designed to dumb the people down, 1902. And they have a statue of her right there with the European with a dagger under a flag like this, symbolizing the assassination. They Europeanized her face, etc. But that's Winona. And the statue is called Eakins Oval. Oval, ovary, oval, Eakins Oval. Then you got the Delaware on one side, the Schuylkill on the other side, the 2 rivers. And then you got the flags on both sides. You see the fallopian tubes. It's just like an ankh. If you look from the air, it's just like an ankh. Now they say the best way to hide things with people who think like boys and girls is put it in their face. They're so busy dealing with belief systems, they can't see reality. And when they do, they run from it. But then they complain about the pain that they receive for doing so. It started another nigger marching organization and funded very well, with another 32-degree reverend marching them all over the place, making fools of themselves, while he in secret gets all kind of payoffs. And got a Moorish fez pretending he don't know these people are Moors, knowing they're not black. knowing they're not colored, knowing they're not people of color, knowing that their birthright is stolen, and knowing all these secrets. The truth of how everything actually works, and paid off comfortably to hide it from you. And no one ever charges them because they say Jesus every 2 minutes. And it's just true. You know, and so on the other hand, our interest is maybe if there's anyone that has any morality left in them at all, that aren't totally corrupted, that maybe they'll aid in helping the next generation by starting to shed the falsehoods and the false narratives that have been put upon them in the name of the Lord's, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Allah, and remove the mystery, knowing that these people are going to be sacrificed. And that's a fact. Now, the deal of it is, Rome can't eat you if you got a turtleneck sweater on. You know, I say, don't go in the cave. Oh, this cave is interesting. It's kind of dark in here, though. You see bats flying out and stuff like that, right? Go over there with tank tops and stuff on. You know, you make sure your pants are tied at the bottom. You know, because when you come out and everybody talking about, oh, where you get that passion mark? Man, you know, passion mark. Vampy got you. You know, and the sooner we wake up to reality and stop dealing with naivety, the sooner we can begin to throw a wrench in the gears of Rome, because it's sort of like this. Vampires like people who are naive, because it's easy food. Meaning that they're lazy too. They don't want to work for the food. So they need ignorant and naive people who are willing to sacrifice themselves. For instance, the women keep on delivering their babies to the churches, don't they? Pretending they don't know they've been feeding on them babies for centuries. The ones they don't rape. And they wonder why the choir boys all have high voices. No, it's like true. And then the women play dumb, like, I had just no idea that those steaks were really baked. I had no idea that in the cellar they were really drinking blood. Although they say this is Jesus' blood, and there's no, and this is crackers and stuff. Crackers and stuff. And this is the body of Jesus. It's the rich or what? Yeah, it's right. And then this is wine, this is the blood. And in the basement, they'd be doing it for real. They've been doing it for centuries. And these people, I don't understand. What we've got to do is start an organization to recover all the missing children. How about sacrifice children? How about organ collections? You know, like a lot of the black codes, Christian black code operations, like you'll see a lot of the so-called eugenics operations where hospitals around the country in North America are always advertising, just like they do with, you know, like types of baked potato chips. If your aunt can't breathe anymore, just come to our hospital and we give you a new heart or a new lung center, or they give you a new lung, as if they did them in a duplicating machine. You know, they took live people that are healthy and eliminate them and fast froze their livers, their kidneys, their hearts, and their lungs. I think they actually have a different price scale on those particular organs based on age, general health and stuff like that. And they've been doing it for years. It's just that because the business is becoming more extensive, they're just coming out with it. You need a new heart? Come to the Heart Center in Philadelphia and all that kind of stuff. Some of the biggest eugenics operations are emerging right now if you do a little bit of research. Also, now back to this point with you. When you look at these 4 points here, 4 gates, you can also have excuse my scribble drawing. And this is where your 4/4, and you all can do this on your own. And logically, 4/4 equal a whole. And of course, these quarters in your monetary system, according to fundamental operations of civilization on Gaia, Earth, are based in the alchemical metal of the moon. Since the moon governs the womb of woman, governs the tides, etc., governs the dew that waters the plants, and then reflected back with the warmth of the sun, incubated by the sun. And so this is why you have 4/4 to the dollar. Well, and the dollar is what? 100%. 100%, which is also 360 degrees. Just want you to pay attention to that, because these are some of the meanings of your feathers, and they should taught you that. And this can go on a lot more. It's just that I'm giving you some basics. Now, also you have your circle above and your circle below. There's also your 360 degrees above, 360 below, you see? And so you have, what do you have here with your 120s? I'm not gonna go all around here because it gets cluttered. You got what? How much you got? 7 what? 360? 360 is what? All right. So your 720 equals what? 9. And then you break your 9 down, your 9 is 3 3s. All right, now, so now when you're looking at this and you look at the operations of woman in harmony with the moon, right? As the moon dances around the earth dances around the sun. All right, so you have, let me see if I can find some space here. And governing the womb of woman, the egg in the uterus is represented also by Venus. And so you have your 5 points of man, or the star of Venus, just below the top horn of the crescent. That's where you get your crescent and the star, which is called Cosmo, all right? But it also symbolizes Mary and Jesus. It also symbolizes Set, or sometimes called Isis and Horus. Are we clear? Or mother and son, Mason. Are we clear? Are we clear? That's why all Masons, when they get around 32 degrees, they can get it earlier. They get a Quran too, but they don't look at it like the lunchboxes look at it. Because they're not doing salami bologna type things. They're looking at the Gnostic wisdom behind it. Are we clear? The cosmic geometry behind it. Are we clear? How the world operates behind it. Are we clear? Morals and dogma and separating the two. Are we clear? And not getting confused about it. Are we clear? But they also willing to sacrifice their children to these damn priesthood because they ain't out to damn lunch. Because they know what's really going on. Are we clear? All right. And so, again, this would be the symbol of the sun, and the alchemical metal for the sun is gold. And then you're dealing with the principles of 3 in the north, right? Right? 3 in the north, right? Right? 3 in the east, 3 in the west, and 3 in the south. That's where you get your news. And so when you see the wise men following the stars, they're doing an ephemerides reading of star charts. Are we clear? So those who rule have a totally different comprehension and understanding of what's going on, distinguished from the masses who are naive and think they know the Lord in heaven and stuff. They're secretly worshiping Constantine, his mother, and the lords of London under the secret Treaty of Verona, symbolized by them 3 stars that you see on them tags outside this door. And then you see the 2 bars, that's the upper world and the lower world. Are we clear? Symbolizing the knowledge of it. Are we clear? And that same symbol that you see on them tags outside this door is also the crest used by George Washington and his family to convert your estates into the states. Are we clear? So the point that we're presenting to you is whatever you will be, or whatever you will to be, you decide whether or not that you want to shed your naivety, or whether you want to continue in your naivety and sacrifice the generations after you, including yourself. And a lot of people think that as long as they go along the program, that Rome's going to give them a peanut butter sandwich. And so they keep going along the program thinking their privileged position. Now, what you will find in the social economic politics taking place today in the world is middle-class Europeans starting to reveal a lot of the secrets of the real republic. Are we clear? They're trying to get the republic back because they're discovering that now they're being sacrificed. They have been secured under the Inquisition operations for so many generations. They got secure and spoiled too, didn't they? What, the masses have been known as white supremacy. Under the Whigamo Party in 1854, when the Europeans decided to start claiming to be white people, which is a legal status, not a complexion, now they're paying the price for it. And so when they start revealing any of the Masonic secrets under so-called sovereign citizen arguments, the so-called rogue element, Khazarians, start calling them anti-government and doing things to them. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's true. Point of it is, like for yourself, that's some of what you're wearing on your head. And you can get into it a little more metaphysically. You'd also deal with this that divides in the houses, that divides in each corner, or what they call these sections will be called gates. Are we clear? And you will find the gates symbolized in Septuaginta, or also in the Bible in the book of Revelation, around 21, 22 chapter. You'll see it in there. And these will be called houses, and these will be called your cardinal points. That's where they get the title cardinal in the church. That's these noble points, primal points. Are we clear? And they will be entry points of also called the seasons. All right, and the seasons would also be called Yahweh, or WHYH, which also represents the 4 elements: earth, air, name them too, come on, earth, air, fire, and water. Those are your building elements. And then underneath them you have subdivisional categories of elements. Are we clear? That would be called alchemical or chemistry. Are we clear? So when you're wearing that fez, you're actually symbolically wearing the history of your entire bloodline. And it can go deeper than that, but basically that's it. Are we clear? That's to give you just a little bit of insight. All right? So in both these instances, that finial is your belly button. That's the cord of your mother tied to the placenta that brings you to the earth plane. And then you start the dance and get your experiences by degrees. That means your life experiences. Are we clear? Go ahead.
I was actually gonna ask the name you gave for the ball, on the fez. You said it was for the earth.
That represents the ball called Earth.
Okay.
And the degrees represent the Earth rotating or actually operating in a spiral behind the sun. And the degrees is what is actually what is used that we call day. And so from the study of woman herself, woman is a walking calendar. She's governed by the moon. So that's on 13. And then the earth itself, which is her sister, is governed by its dance around in the spiral to the sun. And that is 12. And so you got 13 of the moon and 12 of the sun. And what do you have? And so that is symbolized when you see the 7. So that's the importance of 7 when you see 7 used metaphorically and metaphysically in the science of what you call Gnostic wisdom, what's called religion. Because remember, spirituality is breathing techniques, and breath has nothing to do with belief systems. Are we clear? Breathing techniques, not to be confused with religion. Religion is Gnostic philosophies, hermetic law, solidly set, tried and true, and registered for humanity. Islam says. It should be.
Oh, okay.
President.
Okay. I have a question. As you're talking, I'm thinking about that famous picture of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wearing the hat with the star and the crescent.
Of course, that's why a lot of people hide it.
What?
You ever notice that that's one of the least noted pictures of him? They usually try to hide that, and they'll show him maybe with his kufi in different fancy forms, but that one you don't see them promoting that because they don't want the world to know that he was an addict.
So what you're just breaking down about the star and the crescent, the sun and the moon, is that
That's alpha.
representative
I
of
mean,
what?
that would be Cosmo. See, now think this. Just look at yourself. What do you know about you, the physical you being our mother? Because remember, regardless of our age, you're still our mother. Your husband, still your mom. You're still his mom. And you know, psychologically, a lot of times you make adjustments so that we can feel important. Because you know we go out to lunch once in a while. But you know, so that we can fit, you know, you gotta make us, yeah, all right, I got this. But you know, ahead of time we have lunch. Because we stay boys, pretty much. And you know that the feminine advances or matures quicker than we do. All right, you got the X, right? We got a Y, so that means one of the pieces is missing. Doesn't mean that we're less. It's just that your experiments and your experience extended outside yourself. Because every egg is a female, isn't it? Does a male egg exist in nature? No, it doesn't. Once you understand these things and you start acknowledging the truth of nature, you begin to understand things. Now, women cycle 13 times a year. They cycle 13 times a year, but there's only 12 moons and 12 months in a year. It's not a conflict of understanding your walking calendar, are we clear? Because you're governed by the moon and Venus. It's called fertility and fecundity. And so when you study history on the planet Earth and cultures, Asiatic and African cultures, which are rooted because we're the first people, you'll see goats use different symbols of horns. These are fertility symbols. They're not negative, they're fertility symbols. All right, so one of the things that those who misgovern and misdirect Earth and the people of Earth, keep it, just hold that for a minute. really don't want you to start looking at the nature of yourself. Are we clear? Because then they can control the narrative. That's why it's important from a political perspective for them to promote belief systems so that you don't actually deal with the science of life. Because once you start dealing with the science of life, all those things, belief systems, you toss them because you know they're for imbeciles. You know it's for mind control. But once you, if you're not thinking about how things really operate in nature, if you don't really start paying attention to what's really around you, you get caught into the belief narrative, not knowing that they're actually war tools by the priesthood, having nothing to do with your divine development, but actually have everything to do with stagnating your divine development. I just want to bring that to your attention. You know, and so when you're looking at, as an example, Venus, you're looking at the alchemical metal for Venus, which is copper. This is why your monetary system is based in gold, silver, and copper. This is another reason why the Romans removed it from your hands and gave you false faith or blind faith, or another way of putting it, fiat. In other words, they robbed you. And then give you false beliefs to make you think that you're working and getting paid, as an example, and then even taxing that. But once you know the truth of nature of things, you already know that he's full of crap, and you know your leaders' guides are full of crap, and then you also know why most people stay off this subject matter. They'll talk about the symptoms. They're racist because I didn't have a job on Thursday, and I was working really good. I made the best sandwiches. Then they had this guy come in, European, then they'll call him their great white father. A white guy came in, great white father. And it had me train him with my experience, and then they raised him to manager. And he started off getting double pay. They racist. No, that's Unum Sanctum. At what point these people ain't figured this out? Rome takes care of Romans. You're under occupation. And what point, how many generations these stupid donkeys have to sacrifice before they figure this stuff out? And it's not knowable, it's just that they don't read. Because books are anti-Christ. You know, library, ooh, shirk, all that stuff. It's against Jesusness. Give up your mind, all that kind of stuff. Now, is there anything that I didn't answer?
No.
No.
Thank you.
All right. Give Sister Mike.
So my question.
Talk directly in the mic because your voice is soft.
So my question is, someone wants to remove the blinders. Where do they start?
Say again?
If they want to remove the blinders, if they want to free themselves of this occupation, this system, then they want to reclaim.
The system is called Inquisition operations. It's called Inquisition hegemony. You know, like people keep saying the system, the system. It's like saying the dog, name the dog. The system is Inquisition hegemony.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is African Americans, black people, they're blind. They want to return to their Moorish heritage. Where do they start?
They don't know their bloodline. Now that's called keeping this from you in an organizational format is called the Great Seal. However, the Great Seal is also the symbol of the insignia of the Moorish nation. But Masonically, keeping the knowledge from the people will be called the Great Seal. Does anyone, any other questions? Get the brother Mike over here. You got two people over there. I can't hear you.
Earlier you said,
Stay, talk in the mic.
yeah, earlier you said that, politicians were priests,
Sure.
and then you said something about the white supremacy.
Let's make this very clear. In general, the average person with limited knowledge, as an example, loosely recognize from, if they have any insight or experience, will recognize or say things along this line. Anybody with power in North America is a Mason. Anybody carrying a powerful position or job or political position in North America is a Mason. There's a woman, she's an Eastern Star or a daughter of the American Revolution. So what does that mean? A Mason is essentially a mother's son, but when you deal with it from an organizational point of view, they're entered into the chambers of knowledge that is kept from the masses, that liberates them from the naivety that the masses suffer from. That platform is a priesthood. Priesthood don't mean that you're praying, oh, salami, glory of Jesusness and God and stuff. It doesn't mean all that stuff. You know, our concepts about a lot of things are just simply incorrect. A priesthood is the degrees of Gnostic wisdom and knowledge, of seeking adeptship. So it comes in degrees, but those who are exposed to higher knowledge, which are called Gnostics. And it's a priesthood. Now, people's concept of a priesthood is what's given to the masses, thinking that a priest is the guy who stands behind the pulpit, and that he's the God-man, middleman, you know, got the direct iPhone to Jesusness. That's the masses, you know, the little boys and girls concepts, what they think a priest is. No, his job is sort of like the drug man. He's the direct field man that injects belief into the brains of these people to keep them in a stupor. You know, they get like this. They come in, they're cool and everything, you know. 5 minutes, he goes, sandwiches. And they go, what? What'd he say? And then they start, oh, shit. And then 2 minutes later, they're all going, with their eyes all glassy. Oh, they're on the hypnotic spell. That's his job. Then he feeds them a party line, and everybody agrees to it. And he's never really given them really knowledge.
Oh, the Lord loves you. That's why you had a peanut butter sandwich when the people across the street didn't. Now, give me an amen. Everybody goes, well, I didn't have peanut butter. Shut up and praise the Lord. And they go along with the program. And after a while, they get this habit because they're creatures of habit. And they think that's spirituality. It's mind control. As a matter of fact, they're trained in hypnotic casts of spells, including linguistic tonals, what you call sound bursts, to bring the people to certain levels, and then they project. That's why everybody, they be saying, oh, yeah, see, because what it really is, those who don't believe in God ain't gonna be saved and ain't getting no sandwiches at lunchtime. And everybody says, that's right, because we only want to get the sandwiches. They be eating sandwiches across the street too. But they saying the same thing about you. But they all saying, it's only one God. Well, why don't you go across the street? Because Rev said, don't go across there. They ain't got the real God. We got the real God here. But all of them's name is God. I mean, you know, but a child can pretty much figure out this is a lunchbox scenario, but the parents usually smack them around while they're young, so by the time they're 7, they're already in a stupor. Reverend got a nice, really nice suit. I mean, like, really nice suit. Lexus and a Caddy and BMWs and whatever. And a parish. And accompanied by the choir singers, you know, sisters at the front. They go to Bahamas every year, spend half of Jesus' half. You know, stuff like that. It's for the Lord. And you know how many adults promote that to their children and tell them that's spiritual? And be sincere. They're just sincere hypocrites, but they're as sincere as they can be. And if you train them when they're children, by the time they get adults, if they're still in that state of mind, you can sell them a bond off 55 Water Street in New York.
And they think they invest in a company, they just invest in their child's birth certificate. Is that satisfactory to you? All right? Because it's true.
Islam.
Islam family.
I have two questions for you. The
Make them
first
very clear.
question was, you just mentioned something about Inquisition.
Hegemony.
Yes.
Inquisition hegemony is the operations on planet Earth. You know how like in different lodges they talk about blue house, red house, and all that kind of stuff? Well, the red house is what they overthrew in 1492, January the 1st, near midnight, which is why they have the Mummers Parade in Philadelphia, where they took your birthright January the 1st and tell you it's New Year's. No, that's the fiscal year of Roman conquest of the Moors. New Year's is really the vernal equinox of the gate of the east, which you call the stars now in the east. That's why they call women Eastern Stars, because they really are Eastern Stars. Let's just give you a little insight.
How did you spell not Inquisition, but the second word?
Hegemony. Hegemony.
Second question is, do you know the ancient name to what we call the state of Maryland now? The ancient name to what's referred to as Maryland?
This area is
Piscataway.
the ancient name for it. What you call, some people call the Aboriginal name. No, you got it on your papers. Go ahead, good brother. Tell them the ancient name for this area.
DC?
Yes.
Oh,
Give him the mic.
well, for DC, it's,
Get in. You're not in the mic.
Nachoptank. Yeah, Nachoptank.
DC stuff?
Listen to him. What I'm trying to do is get you all to participate and to share your knowledge with each other.
It's, you can actually wiki it, or you can Google it for, you would type in before.
Stay in the mic, please. You're drifting from the mic.
What is the name before Washington DC? And you'll find all the information of Maryland, Virginia, District of Columbia, and you would then reference that, either other sites.
And you do that with all the territories.
Yeah, double check it.
However, the name of the land in general is a Mexican.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
I have a question.
All right.
Hello. Greetings. So, I guess, we're awakening as Moors, we're getting into knowledge. But I was just curious what your vision is of an active Moor. What are some of the activities besides always studying, of course, the active Moors would be involved in?
What do you mean active Moors?
So, we know Inquisition hegemony, did I get that right? Is upon us. So we're trying to get ourselves out of it. I guess that would be the active.
The deal of it is when it's sort of like once one begins to wash the sand out of your eyes, the protocols become obvious, which means truth already is. It's sort of like once you understand truth, you don't need to be told a protocol. It becomes obvious.
Yeah,
and that's what means active. So when you're talking active, that means when you start learning the knowledge, you start doing things that represent you reclaiming your status, your estate, and studying those areas that are necessary to start throwing the wrench in the gears that starts killing them bonds that's on the stock market, because you'll never capture them. Like for instance, like the Europeans, Romans, as they recognize people are waking up, will start giving them promises. with site drafts and everything in reclaiming or authenticating the birth certificate and things like that, that's like an offer. When you'll never, not that you won't in your intention, they will never honor anything. That's the foundation of their operation. But what that will do is buy them time if they can get you running around in circles for a couple of years trying to grab any of these instruments that actually have allonges on them. Now, write this word down, allonges, A-L-L-O-N-G-E-S. An allonge would be all affidavits and attachments that are connected to any original document. And like whenever something's on the stock market, it never stays as it is. You have multiple signatories that come under it that are using it. Are we clear? And so when you retrieve these instruments that they're promising you'll retrieve, they'll never give you the originals because the originals would expose the fraud. Are we clear? But keep this in mind. What is it that you understand in law? If someone is seeking, like say, to claim or take control of any of these instruments, that person who has control, rightful, or what you would call lawful legal control, would be called holder in due course. And a holder in due course, to have any claim that will stand under a challenge, must have the original document with its wedding signature and all connected allonges. Now you tell them how many people so-called reclaim the birth certificate or authenticated, even seeing any attachments to it called allonges. Which means they ain't getting original shit, nothing. They can't be holder in due course. They're just, the Europeans are buying time. I mean, but it's a beautiful exercise of, rabbit hole stuff.
I guess what I'm asking is for you to explicitly state kind of what these obvious truths are in your vision of action.
What would our?
So you said it's obvious once you awaken, the action to take is obvious. So
now what you would do? All right. Now say example. This is as an example. Now that you know that after the commercial mercenary war, upon which there was never a treaty signed, which is called falsely in history the Civil War, the United States Service Corporation operatives in the Jesuit order not only attached to the World Trust, but set up what is called your U.S. Treasury bonds on the backs of the defeated Moors, who are now commonly being tagged Negro, black, colored, and Indian, which is why all of these people who think that human beings are people of color got European names. What's your name? Joe Smith. It's not their name. That name belongs to the European families. I don't care how many generations you use it, your property. Now, protocols is if you know this, what do? Throw a wrench in the gears. What do you mean stop transacting business in his name? It starts killing the bond. It's called throwing a wrench in the gear. All right, now in the political realm of honor, for right call of your inheritance, it would be called nationalization. In another way, in the Septuaginta would say, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. In another way, it would say, whoever buys or sells with the mark or the number of his name is the property or fruit of the beast. There's enough, all these different ways is telling you actually the same thing. So once you understand this, you stop entertaining those things that promote names and principles that delude to servitude, peonage, and slavery. Just doing that starts throwing wrench in the gear. That's called logical protocols. Because that's what he uses to move the bonds. It's sort of like, they're not going to allow you to capture it. I don't care how they promise you. But you can stop cooperating, can't you? So once you know, you start doing things that oppose it. That's all. Intelligently. And another thing, like over the years, When we're telling people, you know, to declare their nationality, that's the first key because it takes you out of the platform. But you gotta study it. That just doesn't work just because you just did that. You gotta study it. Because they did this thing in layers, right? So when you nationalize, you're improper person in law. So improper person in law, which is impropria persona, in law, that returns the being into a legal standing to have claim of his inheritance from his forefathers. Outside of that status, you don't even have a right to argue. That's why blacks have no rights. Black is a tag. They think black's an identity. But when you accept it, you've abandoned your estate. You see how that works? See how gentrification works? See how they can target certain communities now? Well, I paid for this. This house been in my family for 32 years and stuff. And they just threw us out of our house and stuff. It wasn't your shit. That was your impression. See, they don't understand what sharecropping is. They think that a deed is a title of ownership. That's a fuel operations of sharecropping. Dead pledge. The contract is dead, and your body, your labor, and your future, and your inheritance is the pledge. It's already pledged. It's called hypothecation. Now, if you know that, what do you start doing? You start thinking along the lines of playing a different deck of cards. Well, I ain't got no cards. You better start thinking. Well, I can't box. You better learn how to jab. But I was going like this in the ring, and he punched me in my eye. I don't think that's fair. No, your hand's supposed to be here, not like that. And you want to play those games, you're probably going to come back, lumped up and stuff. Yeah, I know, but the ref jumped me and stuff. No, the ref didn't jump me. You weren't defending yourself at all times. And it's like, it's logic. The real deal is, common law and common sense has so much in common. It's just divine, rational thinking. People keep making this stuff. It's complex. How do you think? Get the smoke out your eyes for starters. And just see things for what they really are. Yeah, but I don't look at that because that mole on my nose and shit. Well, it's tough cookies. Look at it. And get some tweezers and pull that hair out of it, whatever. Don't even start talking about, well, if I put bubble gum on it, maybe they won't notice it in the picture and stuff. Well, stop. Get over yourself. We got to start reading again. Really. And it becomes obvious. That's what I'm saying to you. Meaning that if you've been told since you was a child that spiritually 2 and 2 means 3.5. Because Rev been saying that and everybody been buying into it, and he's been taking the other half for years. He's living good. He's been taking the other quarter. The other half accumulates. Then somebody school you in basic child math and say, no, 2 and 2 means 4. Well, in China it doesn't, see, because in different language, the spirituality of the cosmology of in different languages, it's a matter of interpretation. You keep that off. They ain't putting you on the cash register. Because 2 and 2 is 4 in China too. Yeah, but in Australia, 2 and 2 is 4. Get over yourself. And once you understand the rules, you just toss the falsehood. That's all. And just because Cuz is still into the smoke screen, you're my boy, but I can't roll with you no more. You know what I mean? Why do you think our people's pockets are always empty and everybody else's comes full? They got problems too. But do you, realistically, be honest, do you see other nationals come here to North America and immediately go into poverty, or you see them having businesses, gas stations, and all this stuff, while we sitting around talking about skin color?
And we had these Indians in here pumping my gas and stuff and got attitude just because he got a turban on and shit.
That's how we talk. They ain't Indians either. They're Hindustani. They deal with international law like civilized people. But since these people who think that human beings are crayons don't want to deal with national and international principles, they suffer the consequences of the black codes. Why are they complaining? They're doing what they desire to do, following Reverend Jones.
because he's a civil rights guy.
14th Amendment person, which is an artifice on the stock market.
No, that's Jesusness freeing the black man.
Don't keep that stuff off. And this is really all it is. Once you understand basic truths, you'll stop what? Letting these parasites have their hand in this pocket while the state got their hand in this pocket, and the one hiding behind Jesus, God, Allah, and everything, and the other one, you know, politicians, and you think that they're separate. They're both parasites. And that's true. Uncomfortable truth, it's the truth. And when you start shedding them, you start directing your energies back to your families. Then you put a trust in place to put a fence between you and them damn parasites. That's why they get mad when you all start studying trust law. But we can't do it for you. All we can do is keep informing you and trust that you take the honor and dedication to yourself to start doing some work. Because cure is not a pill. Can you answer this? And then you give you an answer, and then you're looking for a cure. It doesn't come, truth doesn't become until it becomes your own. You must become the truth you know. Storm, sis.
I was just gonna say to that, kind of like to your question, but in general, and I think to the—
Say the mic, please. Say the mic in your face.
No, to the sister over in the
Because every
back.
time you move like that and keep your mic over here, you know. So wherever you turn, keep the mic with you.
But I was gonna say to that, a friend of mine, we were talking the other day about how like fundamental reading really is, because we both grew up like in the Christian church, and I know quite a few of y'all might have heard the saying, the lion would lay down with the lamb. And when you go to Isaiah, where that's found in the Septuagint or the Bible, you find out that it doesn't say that at all. It says the wolf will lie down with the lamb. But that's something that everybody I grew up with, you know, heard in the church so many times, but no one ever goes back to really pay attention to what they're really getting or where that's coming from. And like we had the question, like, did it ever say that? Well, in the question I posed like to her, and she was like, yeah, that's true. No one took the time to say
and then
what
start
words
dismissing it after they hear the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Like so for everyone, I think when you were asking about what do we do like as for our brothers and sisters, our black brothers and our African American brothers and sisters, how do they get to moving? It's a matter of fact of, like you said, learning their pedigree, like really taking that and saying, okay, I'm gonna do something, because you can, like grandmothers used to say, and everyone still says, you can lead a horse to water,
but you can't make them drink.
You can't make them drink. Like,
and another thing that it says, like in Septuagint, it says there will be two in the field. One will be taken, and the other will be left. That's what it symbolizes. When it's, Book of Isaiah 64:65, when it says, I hold my hand out all the day long to a hard-hearted people, hard-hearted and rebellious people who are not called by my name. When they repent from their sinful ways, I will hear from heaven and heal their land. L-A-N-D. Not the cloud, like Reverend Jones said. And so what he been doing, taking all your resources of the land, keeping your mind and belief systems on the cloud, looking up there, one of these days. And meanwhile, he got $3,000 suit, you understand, Lexus or three, parish here and a parish over there, and total access to Jesus' account. All you gotta, you know how you gotta test the revs? All you gotta say, well, this week, you know, I have to go to work, and me and my husband, we're going out of town, so can you give us Jesus' account so we can make direct deposits, because we won't be in church this week, and see if we give you Jesus' account to the rest account. And if you do research, you'll see it's his account. Just a statement. But yet, most of the adults in them churches be teaching their children that Jesus got a bank account, Chase Manhattan, wherever, and make sure you don't rob Jesus-ness. And the child be up there like, they plotting on buying a taffy, you know, and they be going like this, because child got sense enough to know they get ready to rob them. You notice how the roof is always leaking, but they never notice a leak? Roof funds, new building funds. They were saying that when grandma was here. And she gave up her house that should have went to the children for the building fund. Yeah, right, please. These con artists have been getting off on these people for generations, and the people are afraid to just look at it for what it is, because these people keep saying, Jesus. And then people, they start getting, you know, they get them circles in their eyes and stuff, start going like this and stuff. And they you know, as soon as they, Jesus, they start, you know what I mean, doing this balancing act. And you say, damn, what's wrong with you? I'm spiritual. You know, they get ready to speak in tongues and stuff. Ask them to translate some of that stuff. Right. Ain't gonna happen. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add on to it as well. This is good commentary. Because I know I spoke to you before about it, and just answering that question and to support you and support Taj. From a male's perspective, because if anybody knows me, everybody knows my attitude is very serious when it comes to this. So, to articulate that, so for us, right, men, right, the same way we can go out here and size each other up and be so tough about whatever it is, right? These are our customs and our principles, and we need to be just as serious and founded on these principles like anything else that we take seriously, whether it be a block, whether it be like a block or somebody stepping in your shoes, whatever that is, you know what I'm saying? These are our customs and our principles, the same way Europeans would use Christianity as a foundation to crusade. It's the same way we use Zodiac Constitution and all of our most customs, our heritage, and our principles to stand up against them and go toe to toe, martially tough, like at peace. We have treaty of peace, but
One
at
of
the
the
same
things that
time,
they did. The things that I wanted to do, I wanted to slow down the Tropicon's letter to the court where everything is. Hold on for a minute, y'all.
We got like 15 minutes down.
All right. Now, as a rule of operations, and of course, most of you have this on your flash drive anyway, but as a point of reference, to remind you on why certain things are given to you for you to study, it's also to keep you cognizant of what's going on so that you can logically maintain integrity in your protocols. You know, what would your protocols be? Once you're aware of something, stop cooperating. You don't have to be belligerent, stop cooperating. You'll get it, Brother Mike. Now, as we were going through the Tropicon, many of you familiar with the congressional records with Tropicon's speech, right? Right?
I had a question about it. I watched the video when Tropicon was speaking on that. How is it different from the actual document? Do they write a document and then kind of do a summary version?
What they've done for the most part, a lot of things that he said on the floor, they cut out. And as you'll know, a few years ago, they murdered him and say that he accidentally turned his tractor over on himself. So a high-speed tractor in a farming field can turn over, you know that, right? BS. Because he told too much. But let's go to down and scroll down on one part of Tropicon's statements. Now, I just want you all to know also, one of the brothers that worked directly with him also communicated with us, you know, even a couple years ago, and I talked to Tropicon himself actually a few years back. So really, he's been a target anyway, because he talked too much. Not too much, he just told too much truth. And remember, all your Europeans are either Knights Templars, Malta members, one of the orders. And basically, while he was exposing the issue of, and you can do the research on Lewis McFadden on the floor of Congress, 1932 and 1934. This is basically what he's referencing. And because Lewis McFadden was also planning to sue them, including members of the Federal Reserve. And they poisoned him when he went to visit his daughter in New York. So most of the time when anyone with any substance of knowledge starts telling the truth, they usually kill them. It's not the bullet, they poison them. Are we clear? And the only reason why a lot of things that are the norm for their operations doesn't take place as much in the different manners as usual is because they're under pressure from Manchurians. Are we clear? Manchurians you would refer to as Chinese. So the economy doesn't stop everything, but it put brakes on everything. Are we clear? And the nations of the earth are not buying their T-bonds. And so it's like they can create as many birth certificates as they want to. Nations of the earth ain't buying them no more. That's why Trump got to negotiate. Are we clear? Are we clear? Although on the other hand, they threatened him and his family. And so as another motivation as for him to start what they would refer to among themselves as clearing the swamp, which is why none of the politicians, Republicans or Democrats in Washington like Trump. Are we clear? But he's actually backed by a part of the military who are trying to restore the republic. Their total motives will not necessarily be honorable, but in general, that's what they're operating. That's what's going on. Civil war's been going on, like I've been telling you all for years. It's just that it's low key, and they've been artfully keeping it out of the mainstream. But people who know real world politics know absolutely that that's the fact. Now the deal of it is you're still the food here regardless. Are we clear? So let's go to part of Trafalgar's speech, because we only got a few minutes left. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitute, which would be called fiat, right? One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper in debt. We the people no longer have any money. Most Americans have not been paid any money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Right there, he talked too much. You get the point? Because once the people understand they ain't even never be getting paid, they might start choking people at the ledge top, because they've been thinking that they've been working and getting paid. No, they ain't getting paid. That's private commercial paper that must return to them before you can do anything with it. Are we clear? And then they can adjust it by inflation however they please to. Anyway, most Americans have not been paid any money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are bankrupt along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes, there's Federal Reserve notes you have in your pocket, right, are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Are we clear? So once you understand that, will you start lying on yourself and calling that money? Or will you change your language? And then when the Inquisition, hegemony, called Inquisition Revenue Service, that present to you as the IRS, start sending stuff to you, you tell them, you know we're not allowed to have your money, and you're part of the Khazarian banking account for the Jesuit order to rob the people. You know the people are not allowed to have money. Now, once you release my right to my estate, then maybe I can cut you off a piece. However, you're not the legitimate government, are you? You know, so once you understand protocols, the answers become obvious. You see, you understand what I'm saying to you? You just gotta be thinking, that's all. Thinking on your feet. You know, like you're in the ring, somebody keeps popping you with their left. You don't stay in the same position. Come back and change strategy. You don't do the same stuff. And don't start talking about the ref junkie. Now, inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible, that's another way of saying corrupt, governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply and movement of Federal Reserve notes, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of FRNs, paying only for the printing costs of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, T-bills. And that's them T-bills they set up after the commercial mercenary war that they called the Civil War, and they set them T-bonds up on your backs. That's what your so-called institutionalized slavery is. So once you stop feeding the party line, and everything you do, you learn to live in contracts, learn how to sign things, you start messing up the system. That's why they get mad when you start signing all rights reserved, when you stop signing Smith, Jones, and Johnson, and all that kind of stuff, when you start commanding the promissory notes that matured in 9 months on the mortgages and stuff like that, it messes up the whole process. Then you create a trust and start putting yourself in trust where they got to deal with the executive before they deal with you. They can't do what they call ex parte actions, which is what they've constantly been doing, taking people's property. It puts a wrench in the gear. It's called protocolism. It's called, once you understand how things work, if you just sit back, drink a cup of tea, and just start, where is common sense? Start throwing, you feel, the Lord up there having come and give me a sandwich because he took them all. No, stop all that. Get some nice tea, chill back and say, please, common sense, come back. Wherever you've been, come back and just start respecting her. Because she tell you every damn thing. It's just that we don't respect her. So we keep getting our asses kicked. It's that simple. You understand what I'm saying to you? But let's continue. Now this is the position of people in debt, right? Now, the Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law. What's the canon law? Popes of Rome. So the people think that the Federal Reserve is a United States government agency. No, they're keepers for the Vatican. As soon as you get that through your head, you start thinking differently, don't you? And then you start taking a little bit of time to figure this stuff out, don't you? Now notice this, prior to 1913, now, so we're talking 1913, we're not talking about deep metaphysical research in Egypt where you gotta lift up 2 pyramids to figure out how stuff works. This is contemporary time, right? 1913, right? We ain't talking about,
See, it's the ancient Egypt when you gotta have the archaeologists go into the old dusty computers. You know they had computers there in Egypt and figured it.
Yep, stop. 1913. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear allodial title to property. Free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. So that means before 1913, no daggone mortgages and liens existed here. They were all allodial titles, also referred to as aboriginal titles. How come most of the people never heard of them and your so-called black leaders don't teach you about them? Because they're paid off to keep you under the Christian black codes, believing that you own stuff when actually you're sharecropping. Are we clear? So now if you know this, soon as you get a property, you're gonna put a quitclaim deed and convert that back to an allodial title and put it in trust. What you did, just put up a fence. Now you're gonna continue to study to defend it because they've already assumed the property hypothecated, so they're gonna be coming at you any kind of way they can. You see, so what you wanna do is stop burning your energy on belief systems, now put your energy into knowledge. Meaning that, learn the box. Oh. See, before I used to do like this. Now, I can have a little bit, not the best at it, but I got a little bit going on, and you just like that. And then you teach someone else. Go ahead.
Can we get you in 2 weeks? Can we get you back in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
We can?
All right.
But we gotta cut it, so we can get you back in 2 weeks. I mean, everybody, y'all cool with that?
Cool. All right.
Okay. So, look, if y'all give donations, y'all give any type of donations to the brother back in the back, and you know what I mean, that'll help out a lot. The brother wanna say something to y'all real quick. I know Yaziel, he works here. He runs his place, but he wanna say something.
It's real brief, so I was expressing to the brother the knowledge. that you all getting here this evening and what they be bringing. See, I said it before to a lot of people. Churches don't do that. They give me truth and everything, knowledge and how you can move, not just talk, but what we all have to do as a people to make things work as a whole. And that's what this brother continue to do. Now they travel to bring that info, literally, info. I be sitting over here, I be listening to it, hey look, and everybody getting that same information. You can't get it nowhere else. We know that. Why? They don't want us to have that. As long as we don't have that information of who we are and what we're supposed to be doing, that's how they keep us oppressed and keep us as a slave. I'm gonna leave it at that. You know, but the brother keeps trying to find a way, you know, showing us how to get out of this based on what we know every day. But we don't understand it, but he's bringing the knowledge and showing how to implement all this, everything they continue to do every day. And we don't even see it. But I want to thank my brother, you know,
Appreciate
always.
Appreciate
you know, hey, that's why I'm here, you know what I'm saying?
Right on
you know, because that spirit, it's all because you've given it freely.
Hope I did
You know what I'm saying?
good.
It's freely. You know what I'm saying? And we, man, I gotta say one more thing, because I remember the days of Malcolm X and all, I mean, they ain't want to get that information to our people. They try to find a way, anybody try to bring knowledge to our people to find out how to get out of this, or how to use what the knowledge that we have to better ourselves as a people, they wipe them out.
Yep.
This brother walking in his door freely, literally. Hey, that's just I feel that spirit, and that's your love for your people.
Yes.
And I want you to know I appreciate that, and we all should appreciate that, because the brother, he traveled so far for this, for you, for all of us. And I love that. And I want to just tell you I appreciate it.
One other thing I want to share with you, on the way down here, there's a European bus driver on a mega bus. She stopped the bus, and came to the back and said, "We watch all your videos, me and my friends." I don't put them videos up.
Come on.
Everybody does. She says, and I just want you to know that we appreciate the work that you're doing and keep up the good work. I'm just happy to drive you to Washington.
Wow, beautiful.
Some of us take this stuff for granted because we're around it all the time, man. But this brother has been through a lot. I mean, a lot of people don't know he's been kidnapped by these people for long periods of time, but he's still with us. So that's how deep this stuff is, man. But a lot of people, man, we take it for granted. But let's keep on learning this knowledge, man, so we can collectively keep moving forward, man. But Brother Kim back there, anybody that can support the movement, man, you know, and we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Yeah, give me the mic for me.
Hold on.
I want to share one more thing with you. I'm going to bring the papers down, Ollie, and show them to you. In Annapolis, a few years back, I was coming back in an Acura from Virginia with a Diva, and they profiled me on, I think it was 13 or something, anyway, in Annapolis. Wrote me all kinds of tickets and stuff. So I sent this shit back to them. You know how I tell y'all all the time. Recently, I got in the mail, they were asking the Attorney General of the state of Maryland to reinstate a warrant to activate. I'll bring the papers and show you. Attorney General of the state of Maryland wrote back and said, "No low prosecutor," meaning that y'all on your own. In other words, the deal of it is holding a position, because they already know the difference between rights and privileges, you know. But the deal of it is, if people don't have the courage to take a stand and be willing to sacrifice for the next generation, they're going to be sacrificed any damn way. If you get the point. But I'll show you the papers, no low prosecuting. We ain't prosecuting shit. What I'm saying is, the more you can get people to stand up for fundamental truths and rights, but understanding it, not doing it because somebody said so, the vampire starts dying. He only dies because you keep on, keeping that passion mark all fresh with a straw in it. Putting a fresh straw in it every day, and he say, oh yeah, all right. Man, that kind of hurts. Well, calm down. And this is what they've been doing to them. They've been sucking our energy. So stop feeding the vampires. And with that, I say thank you all for coming out to Everlasting Life. And it's not only good food, good people, and I appreciate you all too, the same way you all appreciate us. Thank you.
That's right.
All right, family, I hung in there with y'all. I was gonna go log off a little early, but it got good to me, so.
I can't believe you stayed.
All right, I hung around, so that's the end. So until next time, tune in to the Empower Hour tomorrow. We'll have Malik Zulu Shabazz, the attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz on. And he's going to be talking to us about the proper protocol when being confronted by the police. So that's tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m. We're going to go live right here. And if you can't catch us live, definitely check out our YouTube channel, because I upload all this. I upload these videos like this, and it's a whole lot more on MsFreethepeople. That's MS Free the People under YouTube. Check subscribe there so you guys can stay connected and share. You never know who's on the other side of that share that really needs this information and takes heed to it, and it can change the course of their life. You never know. So, share, even if you're uncomfortable with it. Come on out of that comfort zone and share the information. All right, family, take care. Peace.